We are under a week from the NFL draft. And as someone that loves talking about football, there's some common videos that I can make. I could do a mock draft of what I think is going to happen. I could do a mock draft of what I would do based on my evaluations of these prospects. I could do, what the best quarterback is and talk about that again. If you did not know, there's a video on the channel where I talk about the best fit and play a little bit of matchmaker. There's all these things I can do. But the NFL draft and the process leading up to it is flawed, and just from the fact that evaluating prospects is unpredictable. There's no formula that defines a great player. It's all about the best educated guess possible. And as fans and as people that love to talk about football, we have more resources than ever before. And something that I've noticed from each year of the draft, it becomes the conversation like clockwork, especially with the quarterback position, the most important position in all of football, is the fact that tools and the ceiling and everything around that narrative and conversation, when we have prospects like Josh Allen, when we have prospects like Anthony Richardson come through the draft process, it becomes the focal point of the conversation. And I want to take some time and walk through the logic of the people that love talking about tools and ceiling and help people understand why we talk about it the way that we do. Because part of the problem, especially, I'll talk about it on TikTok, and I only got about 90 seconds to explain my take. I have to be short and concise and very quick with it. At least with YouTube, I can elaborate and give long explanations of what my justification or my reason is. And part of the issue is some people take it to one side or the other with no gray area in between. And what do I mean by that? That you can't take a player that's all tools. And if you do prefer that and you prefer what the ceiling of a player is, that means guys like Jalen Milroe should be your #1 overall pick in the draft. That you value those over everything, and your reasoning should be that and only that without any kind of context. And that's part of the flawed process of evaluating prospects is there's so much context with every single guy. Each one of these players is a human being at the end of the day with strengths and weaknesses, whether it be mental or physical. There's always going to be some sort of flaw unless your name is, Myles Garrett and Andrew Luck. For God's sake, people said Myles Garrett, his flaw was liking dinosaurs and poetry. But it's all about the educated guess and how much of that risk are you willing to take if the road to what the best version of that player could be, which to me, that's what I'm defining as a ceiling, the best version that they can be. And are you willing to A, trust in your coaching staff, which as a general manager, your job's on the line. Therefore, you are trusting who you are hiring, that they can all collectively develop a player to the best potential that they have. But you also have to take into effect the value of the pick. Are you picking at 1? Are you the first pick in the second round? Is this a mid-round pick? But I do think people end up overvaluing that, where you could get a good player and maybe it was a reach, but at the end of the day, you got a very good player. It's not like Madden where you're maximizing every second of what the best value is for your respective pick. Even if you get a guy who is maybe one of the best players in the draft, but he's a running back. I think of, Jahmyr Gibbs. He was a reach in terms of the positional value, and I think people take it too far. And I guarantee you, if you ask the Detroit Lions, did you regret getting a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs? And I guarantee you they would say no. And another thing you have to consider is the floor. It's all that calculated risk, right? Sure, a guy may not have a crazy ceiling. The best version may not stack up to another guy, but I know I have a much better starting place and I could potentially get to an 8 out of 10 player comparative to a guy who may be a 10 out of 10, but I have a longer road to get to that point. It's all a mixed bag based on how much risk are you willing to take. I get a lot of people hear this jargon every single draft cycle. And one of the most common things that you'll hear fans say is just draft good players. It doesn't matter if they have all these tools. I think of guys like Shamar Stewart in this draft class. He had little to any production. Who cares if he's a freak athlete? He has an incredible RAS score. He's done all these drills. He looks incredible. but when he puts the helmet and pads on, he's not producing. And I do think numbers lie all the time. It's one of the toughest distinctions for a casual fan to a diehard, that you gotta watch what you're seeing on film. There's so many things that could happen in a game of football. A ball could bounce one way and end up into another player's hand, and he gets the fumble recovery. When, Shamar Stewart was in the right position, and maybe it was just a missed tackle and a great play by the quarterback. There's so much different context, but I do understand the fact of a guy who had like 2.5 sacks over the course of his tenure at Texas A&M, but he's got these tools, right? He could be an elite player if this, that, and the third happen, and that's when you're trusting your coaching. But this entire conversation isn't as focused as the quarterbacks. And I think we could talk about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, but I wanted to give you guys a visualization of what I mean by you're taking a risk on a 10 out of 10 player, but he has a longer road to get there, and why GMs are willing to take that risk compared to maybe a guy that has a ceiling of a 7 out of 10, and maybe he could be a little bit closer to that. But at the end of the day, if you can get the guy that's at 10 out of 10, you're wanting to take that risk over this guy. The number one issue is Josh Allen worked out. It worked out, it's great for the Bills, but it's caused a dilemma across the board in terms of the NFL. You don't want to be stuck in a situation like the Miami Dolphins. I think Tua is a damn fine quarterback when he is healthy and ready to go. The problem is, at the end of the day, do you feel comfortable that in the AFC, when you're having to stack up against guys like Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and others, that you feel confident that you're going to have the best guy in that matchup, plus a multitude of other factors that he may not play well in cold weather? And we're talking about Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo at December, January timelines. And so that goes to my next point. I would say Tua and the limited quarterbacks, because of their arm, maybe their size, maybe their lack of mobility, could be at their best a 7 out of 10 quarterback. That's a franchise guy at the NFL level. You can win Super Bowls with 8 out of 10 quarterbacks. I would say Jalen Hurts is in that realm. That's not a knock on Jalen Hurts. Clearly, you could be productive and very good at that rate, but you're just not going to be at the same athletic talent and level as a Josh Allen, as a Patrick Mahomes, or as a Lamar. And that's not a knock on Jalen Hurts, because we just saw he could be a Super Bowl MVP. He could be a Super Bowl champion on an elite roster. But the problem is when you get those guys at the second contract, third contract, not everyone's going to have the roster like the Eagles and Saquon and A.J. Brown. Obviously, Jalen Hurts didn't always have Saquon. He didn't always have A.J. Brown, but he developed, and the roster around him continued to have elite level talent. And let's say, for example, you have a top 5 pick and you have 2 options here. You got, like I said, the 7 out of 10 ceiling quarterback. He may not have the size, maybe his arm isn't that good, but he's poised, he's accurate. Everything that isn't physical, he's at a very good level with. So you fill up the glass, and when you draft him, he's about right there. I don't know if you can see it that well. He's about halfway there to his potential. Now, for a rookie, that's really damn good. You could look at him, you could say, if we develop, if we get a couple wide receivers around him, we could be looking at a very good quarterback that could be our franchise guy. The problem with this, and obviously I'll reiterate it throughout this video, there's so much more nuance and context around this. But when we look at this, the problem is when you get to that next echelon, the guys that have this level of talent, when they get to that second contract and they are taking a big chunk of your cap space, I'm talking $50, $60 million, and you can't pay for that top end wide receiver. You can't pay for those elite defensive players. You can't have that elite situation around them. An elite quarterback is going to be the one that makes the difference. They're going to be the ones that make a huge cover up of all the different holes within your roster. And to the point of Josh Allen ruined a lot of this was from the fact that teams realized that they didn't need a 10 out of 10 talent to have a ton of water in here, a shorter road. I think guys like, T-Law, coming out of the draft, a lot of people probably had the water up here, that he was pretty damn close to the potential. He was 6'6", he's got the arm, he was the golden boy. Guys like Andrew Luck, John Elway, they had that 10 out of 10 frame and build that you are looking for in a quarterback, and you just had to kind of plug and play and put a good situation around them, and then you have a franchise quarterback, a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But the problem is, Josh Allen kind of started with this, if you could see. Not a lot of water in here, but a long road to go to what we see today. And a couple of things with that. First things first, Buffalo gave him time. They put him out there. Unlike a guy like Anthony Richardson, to which he was kind of in the same boat as this. And teams are going to take the chance because they want to be able to have a quarterback who can mitigate all those risks by the time they get to the second contract. Problem being is teams are also trying to maximize what rookie quarterbacks can do on rookie deals, because you have guys like CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels progress to a point where this is going to be the cheapest that they will ever be, and Super Bowl windows become open very quickly. Josh Allen, on the other hand, he got drafted, he got put out there, and he was like, we are going to let him rock, for better and for worse. And he's going to develop, and we're going to be able to get offensive coordinators to help him develop, and we're going to take on a guy like Stephon Diggs, and it's going to be a gradual ramp up. And he broke out as a superstar, an MVP caliber quarterback. And so following that, we get Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, guys that have these tools, but you get this context and situation of, Trey Lance, he was put onto a Super Bowl caliber roster and was expected to be ready a lot quicker. He also had injuries and a multitude of different factors baked into that. Anthony Richardson, he got put out there, but I think the Colts wanted to compete as well and didn't really give the ramp up time. Plus there's been injuries. Teams are always going to lean towards these guys because at the end of the day, when you have the arm talent to be able to throw across the field, offensive coordinators are going to be able to do more. They're going to have more flexibility. They want to be able to have such a wide range of weapons in their arsenal at the core with their quarterback. That's not to say guys like this, I'm thinking off the top of my head, Brock Purdy is a great example of this. I don't see Brock Purdy ever getting to the level of a 10 out of 10 quarterback in terms of the talent, but when he was drafted, the water was damn near full. He got a little bit better, and now he's going to be from Mr. Irrelevant to a $40, $50 million quarterback. But remember where we're drafting. This guy is worth it at a mid-round pick. The 10 out of 10 talent that maybe has the chance to come into the NFL one day and fully maximize his talent is going to be the guy that wins MVPs, is going to be the guy that ends up covering holes within your roster and ends up being the guy that's the face of the league. And you're going to take that risk at number 5 every single time. At number 1. The reason why Cam Ward's being taken is just because he has the arm talent and the athleticism to potentially be even just a top 10 quarterback. And in a loaded NFL, that's worth the number 1 overall pick. Because by the time Cam gets to that contract and he's taking such a large portion of your salary, if he works out in a position that's the most volatile in the entire NFL draft, you want to take a swing on that guy. Though people could argue, I wouldn't make the argument, but there's some people out there that may think Shedeur is more polished than Cam Ward. But Shedeur doesn't have the arm talent. He doesn't have the athleticism that you're looking for to potentially get a quarterback that could mitigate those risks and mitigate those holes. But I'll say this, thank you for watching. I'm worried that this is a little too simple of an analogy, that I went too far into it. It's a little out of my comfort zone. But I love understanding the draft philosophy. There's a ton of examples. There's a ton of nuance and context, but at the core, this is the reason why teams are going to lean towards the ceiling. It's a calculated risk based on the value of their pick. And more times than not, the higher the pick, the more ROI they're going to want. And that's when you get the talent like this. But if you like this type of video, if you like talking about football, give me a chance to talk football with you. If it's a like, comment, subscribe, anything to pop up back on your feed one more time would mean the world to me. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I love doing this, and I will see you guys next time.